And today, we have David Ellison. David comes to us pretty often with nice stories about his life and about his thoughts and about his research. He gave a talk back in March. He thinks he didn't complete it. Actually, it had full integrity. It was a complete talk. But he's going to take on from where he left off there and give us another complete talk. So he's never at a loss for words. David is a teacher. He's a historian. He's an actor. He's a speaker. He's a husband. He's a friend. He's a multi-talented guy. Without further ado, David Ellison.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah.
Very good. Thank you for coming. Some existentialistic humor. What does an existentialist say to, how are you? Oh, I'm fine. I'm just feeling the crushing weight of living without purpose. Or they say, life has no purpose and we are adrift in a lonely universe. So want to make out? If people don't wish to discuss the cruel existentialistic futility of all human endeavor, they shouldn't say good morning in the first place. Anyways, my last talk dealt with dogma and how I was a true believer in dogmas, both the Catholic dogma and the American dogma. I went to Catholic grade school, Catholic high school, Catholic college, taught in Catholic schools for 5 years. A real true believer. So my last talk dealt primarily with how I found my way out of that. And how I, sort of, now any sort of dogma has me running for the door. But I never really finished sort of my thoughts on existentialism and what I believe today and what I call my credo. So let me just begin. I believe in one God, the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, of all things visible and invisible. I believe in one Lord Jesus Christ, blah, blah, blah. That was, I had the truth, there it was. And now this is what I tell myself when I meditate. I begin with this sort of mantra. This moment is a gift. This day is a gift. And there are many gifts. Life is a mystery. Life is fleeting. There is great beauty. There is senseless suffering. And so, find compassion. Strive for freedom. Accept what is. Let go of ego. Look, listen, and laugh. So I'll explain how I got there. And the main idea is I've replaced dogmas and beliefs with what I call core values. And they guide my life, and I think there are many advantages to living your life that way that I will go into. So first of all, just a quick review of, I am an existentialist, at least I aspire to be, as well as a stoic, or I aspire to be. All of this is not who I am, it's who I aspire to be. The biggest existentialists are, Kierkegaard, Nietzsche, Heidegger, Sartre, Camus, and my hero, Erich Fromm. Post-World War II was their heyday. I'm not sure, but they may have been a response to fascism. And certainly, fascism is the antithesis and the enemy of existentialists. The main idea behind existentialism is that existence precedes essence. What the hell does that mean? It means that first we exist, then we create our essence, who and what we are. Now before it was, oh no, God has an idea, the essence, and then creates it. And this turns that on its head and said, no, we exist, but the creation is only begun. Now it's our turn to decide who and what we will be. And so the primary notions of existentialism are radical individualism, a belief in complete and utter freedom, and with that comes almost terrifying responsibility. Guillaume said, existentialists hold that humans have no pre-given purpose or essence laid out for them by God or by nature. It is up to each one of us to decide who and what we are. Jean-Paul Sartre said, man is condemned to be free because once thrown into the world, he is responsible for everything he does. Nietzsche said, you have your way, I have my way. As for the right way, the correct way, the only way, it does not exist. Robert Frost said, accept no one's definition of your life. Define yourself. The poem Invictus, I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. Now, a corollary to existentialism is that most people reject freedom. Sigmund Freud said most people do not really want freedom because freedom involves responsibility, and most people are frightened of responsibility. Erich Fromm wrote a book called Escape from Freedom. And he said, free man is by necessity insecure, thinking man by necessity uncertain. And who wants that? It'd be much easier to accept a dogma or a religion or a fascist and no longer fear death, no longer have to choose, avoid responsibility, feel secure, and even self-righteous and superior. It's alluring. There's also a potential arrogance to existentialists because, we're superior to the rest of you who cling to dogmas. Anyways, I'll deal with that as well. Atheism is often associated, existentialism is also associated with atheism and nihilism. The belief that the universe is neither benevolent nor malevolent. It is merely indifferent. Species, planets, whole universes come and go, and nothing lasts. Man is alone in the midst of apparent meaninglessness and absurdity. A world of endless wars, cruelty, senseless suffering, and nothing anyone creates endures. This is from a website about existentialism. Quote, this is simply stated how existentialists see humanity, on the brink of a catastrophic precipice, below which yawns the absolute void, black nothingness, asking ourselves, does existence ultimately have any purpose? Irvin Yalom said, despair is the price one pays for self-awareness. Look deeply into life and you'll always find despair. Why did you come this morning? Where is this man taking me? Jean-Paul Sartre said, I exist, that is all, and I find it nauseating. Shakespeare said, life is but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage, and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. And the existentialist message is, and I'm going to come back to this, in the end, you're all alone, and no one is coming to save you. Well, I'm also a Stoic, and they make I aspire to be. And they make a huge distinction between what we can and cannot control. Sort of the prayer, Lord, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And so to accept what I cannot change without emotion. If I can't affect it, then why am I beating my head against it? Why am I getting so upset? Why don't I just accept what is? And then in the realm of what I can control, be very thoughtful and intelligent about the choices that I make. And above all, let go of ego. It's one of the 4 agreements in that book. It's not about you. Don't take anything personally. And so our decisions and our actions in the realm of what we can control should be based upon thought and logic and virtue, or what I sort of call values as well. So why did I abandon, however, although I do aspire to be an existentialist, I don't ascribe to nihilism and despair. And why not? And first of all, I just believe in the importance of humility. For anyone to say, I know it's all absurd, is equivalent to say, I have the truth. And it's sort of an arrogance there that I don't ascribe to. And I still think of the Little Prince. It is only with the heart that one can see rightly what is essential is invisible to the eye. I mean, did Sartre find his adopted daughter nauseating? Yes, it is an indifferent universe, but it is still beautiful, or what I like to call awesome. Hiking is my church, my revelation. When I have my coffee in the morning to listen to birdsong, or thunder, or lightning, there's a robin's nest beneath the eave of a carport where I'm watching them feed their young, and I just marvel in the circle of life. And I've spent my life as a teacher surrounded by children. Sorry, children make sense. Children matter. I can't despair if I'm surrounded by children. And ultimately, I believe if I matter, then children matter too. And you matter too. And here's the difference. No, we aren't alone in this universe. We're all in this together. Sort of namaste. That which is sacred and eternal with me acknowledges and bows to that which is sacred and eternal within you. We are all wandering pilgrims, struggling to become free. And so the nihilistic existentialist says, in the end we're all alone and no one's coming to save you. I believe, no, in the end we're all in this together. And we need to save each other. So, these are the values. When I give up all my beliefs, what am I left with? And I've said, rather than worrying about what I believe, I'm going to worry about what are the values that guide my life. And the first is humility. Is the sense, I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, the universe is 13.7 billion years old. I'm going to live for what, 80? I mean, do you know how insignificant I am? The Milky Way is 100 light years across. There are somewhere 2 billion and 2 trillion galaxies. I mean, how? I mean, just the utter pretension that I'm ever going to comprehend this universe is absurd. Even so, it is a noble and human thing to strive for understanding. And history shows that we can understand more than we did and more than we do. But we are never going to fully comprehend the universe. Let's accept that up front. The problem begins when we say, I have the truth, and everyone else is wrong. If there is a God, he, she, it is far beyond our comprehension. Remember the tale of the Ellison and the blind men, and all of them claiming they know what an elephant is. At the end of the day, nobody really knows. I mean, I just look at the history of philosophy, and much wiser and smarter people than I have spent their lives trying to figure it out, and they don't agree. What does that tell you? Nobody really knows, and there are no chosen people, unless we are all chosen. So my first core value is humility. My second is a corollary to that, and that is accepting and letting go. There's this beautiful song by the Indigo Girls, and I won't horrify you by trying to sing it, but it goes like this. We go to the doctor, we go to the mountains, we look to the children, we drink from the fountains. We go to the Bible, we go through the workout. We read up on revival, we stand up for the lookout. There's more than one answer to these questions, pointing in a crooked line. And the less I seek my source for some definitive, the closer I am to find. The closer I am to find. And so for me, I've let go of trying to find the definitive answer. And by letting go, I am a lot more fine. Where there's a famous quote from Dune, life is a mystery to be lived, not a problem to be solved. A critical reading for me was Path with Heart by Jack Kornfield. Early in the book he says, listen, you need to end the war on the world and the war on yourself. And to me, I just sat there and went, oh my God, I mean, that has been my life. Railing against why is there so much injustice? Why this, why that, oh my God. And then myself, I wasn't perfect, why this, why that, why aren't I? And he just said, let it go. And once I did that, it was sort of, thank God, accepting what is. And a lot of this is, it's not about me, not about ego. I taught my students in this life skills course, I said, if a bully comes and starts saying unkind things to you, just think to yourself, healthy, happy people don't say unkind things. This isn't about you. It's about the bully. You don't have to take it personally. You can just laugh at them or turn around and say, are you okay? Why? And it just takes all their power away. No one has power except that which you give them. Don't give. They're trying to find your buttons. And if you just say, this isn't about me, they'll keep pressing and pressing, and the only thing you do is laugh. They'll stop bullying you. Let it go. And I let go of, it took me a long time to let go of perfectionism and embrace imperfection. And eventually this became sort of something I told myself. I am gifted. I am flawed. I am human. The perfect me. If you took away my flaws, I wouldn't be me. That's who I am. And I'm grateful for that. And there's a gentleman here, he doesn't know I'm embarrassing him, Bob Semkin, sitting over here, who sold his house to Edgar and me just recently, about a year ago. And he stood in the house that he and his wife still adored. And he just looked at it and said, in the end, we never own our homes. They're merely loaned to us, and we are merely their caretakers. And I thought, he gets it. All things must pass. So, next one, huge one for me, is gratitude. Dr. Robert Emmons, who made a specialty, he's a psychologist who talks about the power of gratitude. He said, gratitude heals, energizes, and changes lives. It is the prism through which we view life in terms of gifts, givers, goodness, and grace. It reduces symptoms of depression and anxiety, increasing self-esteem and improving satisfaction with daily life. And I would say gratitude is the antidote to despair. It also overcomes the negative bias of our brain. There's been a lot of research to say that the reptilian brain focuses on threats and everything that's negative, as does, I would say, virtually all news media. So we wallow in the negative and the negative and the negative, and if you just look at gratitude, it's the antidote to that as well. And I'll give you 3 examples in my own life. And this one thing, a huge regret in my life, I lived in the closet for 30 years, and oh my God, it just did horrendous damage to me. And frankly, I look back now and things make more sense, and I realized I had all these opportunities for sex, like, can I go back? And so I could spend the rest of my life wallowing in angst and all those missed opportunities, or I could say, if I'd gone there, I'd probably be dead. Because AIDS hit just as I got out of college. And so, shall I focus on all my missed opportunities, or shall I focus on the gift of life? Another thing is, many years ago, my 2 PhD brothers convinced me to take my 403B out of the stock market when it was at 7,500. Every time it punches through a new thing, I just go, no! Hundreds of thousands of dollars. That, like, what was I thinking? The worst financial decision of my life. What a stupid idiot. Or here I am in Akihik and I'm financially secure. I don't worry about money. Maybe I should just be grateful and let the rest go. In front of me there's Camino Real, a beautiful tree-lined walkway. People are trashing it all the time. I mean, what is wrong with them? It gets me so angry. Or I could think, I live right by this park. And when I take the dogs, I can perform some service and make it beautiful. I can find joy instead of anger. I can be grateful. It just changes your perspective of everything. A word about gratitude. It's easy for me because I am a white upper middle class male born in the United States at the apogee of empire. I've had a life paved in gold. Most cannot be so easily grateful. Well then, by God, I'd better be. just saying, appreciate all that I have. And my word to Sartre is, next time you're feeling your existentialist nausea, go hug your daughter. Find something to be grateful for. Next key idea is skepticism, because I believed all these narratives. And now, frankly, I mistrust most narratives, especially government narratives and religious narratives. Jefferson said democracy demands eternal vigilance. And history, I taught history for years. I no longer believe in history. There is no such thing as history. There are only histories. And they are in a constant state of revision. And the first thing you have to ask, well, who's telling it? And just be aware that if you ask someone else, it'll be a different history. I used to tell my students, you're getting the history according to Mr. Ellison. If you go across the hall, it'll be a very different history. And I'm a white boy from Ohio, beware. Okay, so that is skepticism. By the way, my next talk is going to be something to the effect of why everyone should be a conspiracy theorist. Let's move on. Another big idea is freedom, sort of the core of existentialism. And I say this not just mine, but others. If freedom matters, it matters for me, and it matters for you, it matters for us all. The great Greek Stoic Epictetus said, freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. Again, letting go. I don't believe we're born free. There's so much determined by birth, on the male born in the United States to upper middle class. I mean, how much did I actually choose about my identity? Very little, very little. But, and then we're affected by our past, our culture, PTSD, who knows, all the baggage we carry that influences what we say and do. But mindfulness, which is my next core value and very related to this, mindfulness can lead to awareness and greater freedom. It's mindfulness that has enabled me to see what is it that has made me who I am, so that then I'm in a better position to make decisions. We can become more free from our past, from our fears, from our habits, and we can free others from poverty, from oppression, from ignorance, and above all, from fascism. We live in frightening times. So along with freedom, I believe, comes mindfulness. Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychologist, and he didn't despair. I mean, you're a Holocaust survivor and you did not despair? My God, I have no right to despair. And he wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. He was an existentialist. He says, it's not going to be given to you. You need to go find it. And he said, everything can be taken from a man or woman but one thing, the last of human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. And this one really spoke to me. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. And this has really helped in my marriage, because sometimes I just blow up and then regret it afterwards. But if I take a big breath, say, this isn't about me. I don't have to take this personally. And so then I'm free to give a much wiser response than I might have. And so I believe in mindfulness we can find freedom. All right? We can become aware of what has made me me and what is going on. As Socrates said, the unexamined life is not worth living. The other reason to be mindful is to not let life pass me by, to be alive, because life is precious and life is fleeting. And to be aware is to be alive. And so there's this wonderful poem by one of my favorite poets, Mary Oliver, called Mindful. And it says, every day I see or hear something that more or less kills me with delight, that leaves me like a needle in the haystack of light. It was what I was born for, to look, to listen, to lose myself inside this soft world, to
to instruct myself over and over in joy and acclamation. Nor am I talking about the exceptional, the fearful, the dreadful, the very extravagant, but of the ordinary, the common, the very drab, the daily presentations. Oh, good scholar, I say to myself, how can you help but grow wise with such teaching as these? The untremblable light of the world, the ocean's shine, the prayers that are made out of grass. Let's be mindful. Another core value is courage. The American monk and mystic Thomas Merton said, I have come to think that the care of the soul requires a high degree of resistance to the culture around us, simply because that culture is dedicated to values that have no concern for the soul. You're going to have to be different. And you're going to have the courage to make unique and bold decisions. Helen Keller said, life is either a daring adventure or nothing. Or as the other adage says, a ship in harbor is safe, but that is not what ships are built for. We are to take the road less traveled. And I surmise that a lot of us who have come to Aihihi, we have. And another huge one for me is compassion. Compassion for myself, that took a long time to learn, and compassion for others. TMI, but for a while I had troubles with pornography. And I went to a therapist, I said, and of course I was very Catholic, so you can imagine how I was just, I am just, the most evil of all evil. And he just looked at me, and said, Dave, you were just trying to take care of yourself. You were doing the best you could with the tools you had at the time. Let's give you new and better tools. And I've come to see that's all of us. We're all doing the best with the tools we have at the time. And it allows me to see other people with so much more compassion. My siblings are, to this day, cannot forgive my deceased mother. And I've never understood that. She was doing the best she could with the tools she had at the time, and I loved her dearly. The other thing is community, and this is where I think the existentialists really lose it. We're in this together, and once you're in a community, there's this sense of service. And this I read in my last talk. It's a song from Into the Woods, and it's called No One Is Alone. And it goes like this. Mother cannot guide you, as in dogma, religion, whatever. Mother cannot guide you. Where'd I go? Now you're on your own. Still, you're not alone. No one is alone, truly. No one is alone. Others may deceive you. You decide what's good. You decide alone. But no one is alone. Mother isn't here now. Wrong things, right things. Who knows what she'd say? Who can say what's true? Nothing's quite so clear now. Feel you've lost your way, but you decide. But you are not alone. Believe me, no one is alone. No one is alone. People make mistakes. Fathers, mothers, people make mistakes. Honor their mistakes. Everybody makes one another's terrible mistakes. Witches can be right. Giants can be good. You decide what's right. You decide what's good. But remember, no one is alone. We need to listen to the wisdom of others without obligation. We need to share the wisdom we think we may have found without obligation for them. Above all, we need to accept our own freedom and fight for the freedom of others. It seems to me there is tremendous selfishness and existentialistic despair. Can you help others? Then pick yourself up and do it, and you will find meaning. Martin Luther King said, an individual has not started living fully until they can rise above the narrow confines of individualistic concerns to the broader concerns of humanity. Every person must decide at some point whether they will walk in the light of creative altruism or in the darkness of destructive selfishness. This is the judgment Life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? And as Gandhi said, whatever you do may seem insignificant to you, but it is most important that you do it. Another of my core values is hope, irrational hope. But I remember a moment when I was right after college traveling, and I was in Santiago de Compostela in Spain looking for work and not finding it. It was pouring rain. I was in a cafe writing in my journal, just full of despair, saying I'm going to have to go home soon with my tail between my legs, defeated. What has been the point of this? What am I going to do with my life? This sucks. I suck. I hate my life. And it was, one of those bottom moments. 6 months later, I'd found a job. I was climbing up this mountain with my newfound friends. I mean, the truth is, the best was yet to come. And that throughout my life, I could not imagine what life had in store for me. So sometimes we just need to cling to hope, even though it seems irrational. And it is by having hope that we give other people the reason to hope. And I always say, I never thought in my lifetime I would see Nelson Mandela become president of South Africa. It was unimaginable. I never thought in my lifetime I would ever be able to be married as a gay man. And yet here I am. There is always reason for hope, even if we can't imagine how. And it is by hoping that we find reason to hope and we give others a reason to hope, because hope, like despair, is contagious. And then humor. Humor is one of my core values. Sometimes it appears I'm just immature. Probably true. Lincoln, when asked how he could make jokes at such serious times, he answered, I laugh because I must not cry. And I think sometimes when we see the absurdity of the world, we need to laugh. We need to laugh at the craziness and laugh at our mistakes. It was one of my greatest tools as a teacher, and I remember this. One thing I learned is when I was in a bad mood and I walked in, it was a bad day because the kids sensed it and they weren't with me, and it was the amazing power that I had as an educator that if I was in a bad mood, they had a terrible day. And I love to be stupid and sarcastic, so one day I walked in and I just said, you kids, shut up and sit down. And this one kid turns to the other, oh, he's in a good mood. It's going to be a good day. And that's when I went, yeah, when I'm really stupid and silly, they know it's going to be a good day. And I realized that's immense power. The power of humor and the power of just being fiercely in a good mood. And after that, whenever the phone rang, I'd pick it up and say, shut up, kids, and sit down. Hello? Sometimes it was the principal. One time it was the superintendent. So I want to focus on values and virtues instead of beliefs. I'll review mine. Humility, acceptance and letting go, gratitude, skepticism, freedom, mindfulness, courage, compassion, community and service, hope, and humor. Now look at the power of values. None of you can stand up and say, no, Dave, you're wrong. Or no one's going to stand up and say, my values are better than yours. Do you see, if we let go of beliefs and just look, what are the values that guide your life? Suddenly there's nothing to argue about. We let go of judgment when we let go of dogmas. And I think of things, all right, here I am, I've got the equivalent of several master's degree, and I'm an existentialist and a stoic, and these poor, let me look down my nose and say, a Mexican mother who believes in the Virgin of Guadalupe and never even graduate from high school. And she raised 4 kids well and loved them dearly, and I am childless. Can I look down my nose at that woman because she doesn't believe what I believe? It's absurd. Let me look at the values that guided her life, and suddenly I feel nothing but kinship and admiration. Do you see what happens when we let go of our beliefs and just say, what are the values that I see exemplified by your life that's enough. My sister is still very, very Christian. And I just kind of go, really, Susie? But she is similar. She's raised 3 kids. The middle one, my middle nephew, now deceased, had severe genetic defects, and just, it was a rocky road until his death, and she just was a saint. And she's been there for everyone in the family throughout her life. What are her values? Shall I say, do you still believe that Christian BS? Or shall I say, God, I wish I could be like you? That's the power of focusing on values. And, you know, between knowledge and wisdom, wisdom always trumps, and there is wisdom in values. All the peoples who have ever lived, most of whom have had no grasp of science, little understanding of the truth, they've never even heard of existentialism, did they have meaningless lives? Or did they learn to love and be selfless and find happiness? Did it really matter what they knew and what they believed? They found meaning. I think of Nat King Cole's song, Nature Boy. There was a boy, a very strange, enchanted boy. And then one day, one magic day, he passed my way, and we spoke of many things, fools and kings. This he said to me, the greatest thing you'll ever learn is just to love and be loved in return. The one religion that I still respect greatly are the Quakers, the Religious Society of Friends. They don't believe in dogma. There is no hierarchy. Got them into trouble because they refused to tip their hat to anybody. They said we're all equal. And they think if we have a hierarchy, it would deprive you of your right and your responsibility. No one's going to lead you. They believe in the inner light of each person, and it is the responsibility of each of us to create a silence within us where revelation can be revealed, and then we can share that with each other. And our job is not to judge, but to listen attentively to each other. All decisions are made by consensus, and nonetheless, they've agreed on radical values. The biggest one being complete equality. And so they have been on the forefront of women's rights, Native American rights, which led to service, the Underground Railroad, the suffrage movement, and today the refugee movement. Now this one I really regretted I never got to last time, and I'm going to go a little bit over, and I'm going to do it this time, Dan. There was someone I wanted to honor, and that is a gentleman who's been here many times, Dr. Michael Hogan. How many have read his books or come to his talks? And there's one book I'm going to come to that really affected me. But to understand him, he had a son who died young from an unanticipated death, and it shook him to his core. And he wrote, how can we, oh, by the way, he was an existentialist. He said, is an existentialist, I'm sorry. How can we create meaning out of this meaningless loss? For we are the authors of meaning, not God, not fate, not the universe with its millions of galaxies streaming through space, indifferent to our sorrows, our needs, and our terrible losses. What can I do to make sense of the senseless? What unfinished task did the departed leave behind, which I can finish? His son had always wanted to be a historian. So Dr. Michael Hogan became a historian. He was already a teacher, and he said, I started by just seeing my son's face and the face of all my students. And then I carried on what my son didn't have a chance to do. He ended up writing 28 books, including 2 collections of short stories, 8 books of poetry, selected essays on teaching in Latin America, 2 novels, and the critically acclaimed The Irish Soldiers of Mexico, Women of the Irish Uprising, and Abraham Lincoln in Mexico. All of this in response to his son's death. Out of senselessness and despair, he created beauty and meaning. He wrote one book called Living is No Laughing Matter, a primer on existential optimism. Existential optimism. In other words, he didn't, like me, he doesn't buy this despair malarkey. He spoke about 4 plateaus on the way to existentialist optimism. I'm not going to go through that. Get his book. It's called, once again, No Laughing Matter by Dr. Hogan. He wrote, and I'm going to just read some selections and why I admired this man so much. The tremendous freedom of being in charge of one's life, this wonderful deliverance from the bondage of worn-out creeds and archaic philosophies. There's a blank page here. I hope that doesn't mean something. The meaning of life differs from man to man, from day to day, from hour to hour. What matters, therefore, is not the meaning of life in general, but rather the specific meaning of a person's life at any given moment. Great humility and awareness of the tremendous fragility of being human. And this is what it's all about, this kind of awareness in which we see and feel and taste everything new and again, and find wonder and joy and mystery in the mere fact of existence. So, is it possible to be a person of faith, not out of superstition or laziness or fear, but out of wonder? To see that life is a miracle, that the world is full of magic, that whatever one learns or discovers will never be enough, but that sometimes it will be more than enough. This acceptance allows one to believe in all the contradictions and see that in their oppositions lies some inkling of what the truth is. This line I loved. I do not believe we go up to the sky unless it is to fall again with the rain. The lasting experience of transcendence demands more. It requires discipline, self-forgetting, and engagement with others, and at the very least a commitment to a higher cause than oneself. We need to be reminded, and we need to remind those around us through ritual, through daily ways of touching, that we are part of a loving family and loving community. It is how we rescue each other. Only our love for each other will provide us with meaning. Only our caring will give shape to the chaos. This love, this solidarity of human tenderness and hope. I was just in a play, Facing East, and I played Alex, a father, who with his wife gathered around the grave of their dead son, in which they had to finally confront their complicity in his suicide. I loved this man, and there were certain lines that just spoke to me. Twice in the play, he says, "Oh, you confused, earthbound spirits, struggling, imperfect. There's the human condition. Never mind what everyone else says you ought to be like. Dare to be different." His wife was trying to figure out, why was our son gay? And she just says, nobody knows. We don't. He talks about our covenants, to bear one another's burdens, to comfort those in need of comfort. And when it's hard, you just take one step at a time. And at the end, this was the key line for me. My wife Ruth says, there was nothing we did not do for our son. Give me one thing we didn't do. And he says, we did not hold our son in our arms and look into his eyes and say, Andrew, what we want more than anything is for you to be happy. And we trust you, son, to follow the light in your own soul and to find your own way home. There it is. That is what we ought to say to each other. I want you to be happy, and I trust you to find your own way home. And at the very end, his wife, he's just learned that she gave the letter, pushed the son over the edge, and caused him to commit suicide. And he's furious. But as she exits the stage, he turns to her and just says, Ruth, I love you. I mean, he understands her, he accepts her, he forgives her. That's what it's all about. And I'm going to end you, I'm going to skip all this because I know I'm late. I'm going to go through one more with just my credo now, which is what I believe. Again, this moment is a gift. This day is a gift. There are many gifts. Life is a mystery. Let it go. Life is fleeting. Be aware. There is great beauty, and there is senseless suffering. I don't know why. I never will. And so find compassion for myself and others. Strive for freedom for myself and others. Accept what is. Let go of ego. Look, because I tend to look away when I talk to people, a vestige of my poor self-image. Listen, because I love to hear myself talk. And laugh, because it makes life endurable. And I'll end with one final reading of my favorite aunt and uncle, Uncle Fred and Aunt Marge. And I wrote this about them. So what's it all about? My Uncle Fred used to ask me over sumptuous meals we shared at yearly reunions. This is my uncle asking me. I went, isn't that what you're supposed to tell me? I responded, laughing. Uncle Fred had been a Catholic priest, but when told by the bishop to abandon his ministry to alcoholics in order to say more masses, he had a PhD in psychology, Uncle Fred gave up the priesthood instead. Shortly after, he met my beloved Aunt Marge. She'd been a nun, as well as a patent-winning PhD chemist, but she too gave everything up to become an acclaimed artist. They gave each other nearly a half-century of love and adventure. Sometimes I joined them at a stop along one of their gallivants about the world. We discussed education reform while scaling the massive pyramid at Teotihuacan outside Mexico City. Uncle Fred sporting his iconic white hat with a left brim buttoned up rakishly. He later wrote a book on the subject. You see, he never stopped wondering, learning, debating, ever striving to figure out what it was all about. Uncle Fred never doubted Providence, though. He repeatedly cited Saint Will, his nickname for William Shakespeare. There is a divinity that shapes our ends, he intoned piously, rough hew them how we will. Uncle Fred's only fear was dementia. He joked he'd get a suicide pill, except he'd probably forget to take it. In the end, cancer claimed him, quickly, mercifully. Just before he died, he whispered to my aunt, Marge, you were my best friend. She talked to him for the rest of her life, glancing at his hat dangling from the dining room chair. So in the end, my aunt and uncle answered Fred's enduring question together with their lives. Ones of study, service, courage, travel, laughter, delicious food, engaging conversations, great love, and a dogged quest for an ever-elusive understanding. And that is what life is all about. Thank you.
We are not going to do Q&A today. I think that we just need to ask. We covered everything, and then we had a baby and so.